Hang it now. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear us and see us. We're back after a long break, but we are back for a special episode. Daniel, your camera's kind of low brightness. Is that something? Is that your end or my end? It's probably my end.
It could be mine too. Give me a sec.
If you can't change it, I will just do it on my end.
No, I can change it. I'm just.
Oh, that's actually.
Yeah, I don't know why.
It's already a bit better. I think mine might just be a bit too bright as well. It's very possible. Can I change that? Let's find out. Stuff we should have figured out before we went live. Manage cameras here. Oh, I can turn my brightness down, but that doesn't look great.
All right, does mine look better now?
Yeah, yours is fine. It will have to do. No one watches anyway. Everyone just listens. Hello, everyone. All right, we'll be starting momentarily. We'll wait for top of the hour. Fingers crossed there's no technical difficulties. We have lots to talk about today.
Testing.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. That's working. Nice. Good to hear.
Turn up my gain a little bit.
Did you do the tweet, Dan?
Yes. I didn't tag you, so.
Oh, okay. All right, I'm ready to go when you are.
Just one sec.
Maybe let's do a collapsing.
I don't know why I'm still dark like that. It seems better in Skype. So I think some of it might be on your end.
Yeah, I can artificially boost you. It won't look amazing, but see, that just looks. That's probably okay.
Yeah, that looks a little better. Contrast is a little high. Can you adjust the contrast maybe?
Not without making you look a bit. It's actually not too bad. That'll probably do.
Yeah. I need to look perfect.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. I am now recording.
I'm now recording.
3, 2, 1, clap. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 350 for October 1st, 2024. Hey everyone, Daniel Rubino here, joining Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast. It's been a while since we've done one of these. We're calling it the occasional, but soon to get back on track podcast. We will be returning to a regular cadence on these soon. I can't guarantee I'll be on them all the time, but I'll definitely be on some of them. We're going to bring on some of the other staff on Windows Central, including Ben Wilson and probably a Jez Corden every once in a while to take my place and bring in their insight into the exciting world of Microsoft Windows, Xbox, PCs, and more. Zach, nice to see you. I haven't seen you in must be 6 months now. That's not true. Actually, I see Zach every single day. In fact, we actually physically saw each other in Germany.
We did.
We're both at IFA, so that was kind of cool. Had lots of good beer. How are you doing on this day? It's a very busy day.
Yeah, very busy day. I'm tired. I'm ready to go to bed. Yeah, I've been working on basically all of today's Microsoft announcements over the weekend and yesterday and today. So I'm glad to finally have it behind us. How are you doing?
Hanging in there. Site's doing great. We have lots of news today. I think we're up to 19 articles already posted for the day, which for those who don't know, that's a lot for us for 2 p.m. Eastern. So, but in case you're wondering what we're going to talk about, a lot of it's going to be Copilot. And this is just, I'm going to take this moment to tell Zach, told you so. Zach and I both got a note from Microsoft about signing an embargo, and they're going to have news. And Zach was absolutely convinced it was just Windows 11 stuff, even though there was a Copilot kind of logo on it. And I was like, I don't know. Microsoft has been pretty quiet on Copilot for the last 3 months. Like they really just kind of, I mean, they promote it and talk about it, but there were no new features or innovations or talk about anything. And I thought that was a little strange. Um, and so I was like hoping that they would have some big news around Copilot. Like I was thinking added features, but they kind of went above my expectations in terms of what the news was. So we're going to go through all that, of course, talk about Recall. Windows Recall got a major update in terms of the security behind it, how it works, and we'll talk about when it's actually going to be coming and when you can try it out and all that kind of stuff. And then I guess we'll wrap up with the Windows 11 24H2 general availability, the big banner features around that, and then finally wrap up with the news that HoloLens is dead, which I think if this was like 2019, I'd be pretty upset. But now in 2024, I'm like, nah. Like, not that it wasn't amazing hardware. It absolutely is, just like Apple's Vision Pro is amazing hardware. The question is, just because you make amazing hardware, will people buy it or be interested in it? And I think we now have our answer. But let's start first with the news around Copilot. Zach, why don't you take this since you did most of the writing on this in our coverage?
Yeah, so today Microsoft pretty much unveiled a brand new version of Copilot built from the ground up, at least in regards to its interface, with a new sort of design and style. They're sort of going for a more human, a more interactive sort of interface, something that's a little bit more immersive versus the sort of typical chatbot interface we've seen from all of these AI chatbots up until now. But alongside this news, because the new Copilot does come with a number of new features and stuff, alongside the news, Mustafa Suleyman, who is the Microsoft AI CEO, published a letter sort of giving I guess, how best to describe it, a sort of a high-level overview of how he's viewing AI and Copilot at Microsoft. So I'm not going to read his whole letter, but I'll read a few of the paragraphs just to sort of give you an idea of what he's thinking and how Microsoft is thinking about Copilot overall. And then we can start diving into some of the features that have been announced today. So he says in the letter, at Microsoft, we are creating an AI companion for everyone. I truly believe we can create a calmer, more helpful, and supportive era of technology, quite unlike anything we've seen before. Great technology experiences are about how you feel, not what's under the hood. It should be about what you experience, not what we are building. Copilot will be there for you in your corner, by your side, and always strongly aligned with your interests. It understands the context of your life with safeguarding your privacy, data, and security, remembering the details that are most helpful in any situation. It gives you access to a universe of knowledge, simplifying and decluttering the daily barrage of information and offering support and encouragement when you want it. Over time, it will adapt your mannerisms and develop capabilities built around your preferences and needs. We are not creating a static tool so much as establishing a dynamic, emergent, and evolving interaction. It will provide you with unwavering support to help you show up the way you really want in your everyday life, a new means of facilitating human connections and accomplishments alike. With your permission, Copilot will ultimately be able to act on your behalf, smoothing life's complexities and giving you more time to focus on what matters to you. It will be an advocate for you in many of life's most important moments. It will accompany you to that doctor's appointment, take notes and follow up at the right time. It will share the load of planning and preparing for your child's birthday party, and it'll be there at the end of the day to help you think through tricky life decisions. This is an interesting letter, I think. This is because some of the stuff that's in here definitely isn't part of the Copilot announcements today, and I think he even says that further down in the letter. He says, this is a long-term view of where we want to take Copilot. But today's announcements are definitely the start of where he's planning to take this assistant. And so I think it's very curious and interesting to see Microsoft trying to position Cortana. I nearly said Cortana.
I know. Don't want to call it that too.
Trying to position Copilot as more of a friend rather than a tool. Because up until now, Microsoft has been very much in the, AI is a tool. You can use it to help you do this, do that. You can use it to learn, discover. It's a tool. But today, that narrative has sort of changed. If you look at all the marketing material around this new Copilot, a lot of the demos and examples are a person talking to it like a pal, like a buddy, talking to it about sometimes even just nonsense. In one of the demos, the Copilot Vision demo, which we'll talk more about in a minute, the person doing the demo is basically just chatting to Copilot like it's a friend, like, hey, this is my nan. Take a look at my nan in a picture. It's like, wow. And Copilot's responding with, natural responses like a friend would. It's really interesting and very different versus what we've seen from Copilot before. And so over time, Microsoft seems to think that you're going to use Copilot for everything, for it to, as an assistant, as a friend, someone to console with, somebody to cry with, somebody to laugh with. I can't personally see myself doing this. I don't know if maybe I'm in the minority here. Microsoft has data that suggests people are looking forward to this. I read this and thought, no way. No one's gonna buy into this. Dan, what are your thoughts on that? The whole it being a human, like an AI human.
Yeah, so I remember when I first went to Microsoft's campus in February of, was it 2023, when they made the big announcement of what was then Bing Chat, right? And I remember talking to some of the researchers and people behind it. And this and if you go back to the original podcast when we talked about this, I think I mentioned this, that there was an internal debate about how to position this thing, whether it should be like an agent, and technically that's what AI ultimately is supposed to be, or, what people think of it as an agent versus just a tool technology. Up until now, it kind of has been just a tool, right? Yeah. It's been large language models and image generators. And so far, that's really kind of all people know, quote unquote, AI as. And so they've been like these tools that have been built into Photos apps, right? You have Galaxy AI from Samsung that does this, right? So, or it has the ability to take your notes, summarize them, give you action points and stuff like that. So, but there hasn't been this idea of like an all-encompassing agent that sort of has a personality, kind of like exactly what Cortana was, but Cortana and Siri were almost like faux AI in hindsight, right? They wanted to be this stuff, but the technology just wasn't there. So there wasn't the granularity in terms of what the things could do, not to mention the opposite of granularity here. You had to bark out specific commands where it didn't have the semantic fuzziness of being able to figure out what you're trying to do. But now these large language models can do that. But I know like some of the researchers at Microsoft and people working on this, this idea of whether it should be like an agent, like you said, something you'll talk to and you'll laugh and you'll cry or whatever, like, basically this potential emotional connection. Some of the people working on this at Microsoft weren't necessarily for that, or rather they were very cautious about making that the first sort of experience of whether or not people want that, whether they should do that, right? This idea of like building relationships with AI is a controversial one. I would argue it's going to happen no matter what. Like if Microsoft doesn't do this, someone else is going to create. I mean, you already have that like pendant that's out. I forget what it's called, but like you wear it, it records everything, and then it's like a friend and all this, right? So people, like companies are going to make this no matter what. But it looks like Microsoft now is trying to put all these tools kind of together and make what we wanted kind of Cortana to be. It'll actually be really interesting if, I doubt they'll bring back the name Cortana.
No.
But it's just weird because like they could, and it would actually be more Cortana-like than what it originally was. But I like this idea that when you turn on your PC, you have this agent that tells you what's on your calendar, summarizes the weather. And it's not just like, we've had stuff like that in the past where you program it, you tell it, you have a checklist of things you want to see, and you check it, and it'll just present those, right? But this is more about the AI being proactively able to learn your habits and what you do and the things you're interested in, and customizing that. So when you turn on your PC, you kind of get this. I mean, this is the promise of AI, that it simplifies your life, that it solves problems for you, and it goes and does work for you without you having to necessarily tell it to do it. That's going to be the big difference here. So I think this is like a really cool idea. I like the redesign. You can tell though, like I said, with February 2023, it was Bing Chat, and then they came out with Copilot. Now, they're changing the design again, but keeping the name. It goes to tell you just how fast this stuff moved, that there wasn't this overarching grand plan from the beginning. They're kind of flying by the seat of their pants, as is everyone. And it's nice that they do have someone in charge who is supposed to be the visionary behind this, and that's what this letter was supposed to be. So I think it's all good stuff. I think it's going to be super exciting to see. We'll talk about AI PCs in a little bit, but up until now, AI PCs didn't really have any major features that made them separate from other Windows PCs. But now that the hardware is there and the software is coming on board, we should start to light up those experiences, and we'll get into that in a few minutes.
Yeah, I think you're totally right about highlighting the fact that originally Microsoft didn't want this to be an emotional sort of assistant, but now that's quite clearly changed. And I think that comes from Mustafa Suleyman himself, who, if you remember rightly, he was the co-founder of DeepMind and Inflection, and he joined Microsoft last year or earlier this year. I can't remember the exact timing for that now, but I think this is the first real impact he's had on Microsoft AI and Copilot. He is, to my knowledge, in charge of Copilot at Microsoft, and so I think this is him. This is his doing. He's the one pushing for this more emotional, this more human-centric version of Copilot. It's funny enough, if you even try to use new Copilot and ask it what kind of tech it's using, what large language model, to my knowledge, at least currently, it doesn't tell you. It doesn't want you to be thinking about the technology. It wants you to have an emotional connection with it, not a technical one, which I just think is very, very, very interesting. So we should probably move into what's actually new with the new Copilot today, because it is technically available today. It's running out in waves, so you probably don't have it just yet, but some lucky people do, and over time more and more people will gain access to it. But as of right now, if you do get access to it, you will see a brand new interface, which is, as I mentioned, being built from the ground up. It's a lot more immersive. It's a lot more fluid. There's a lot more animations to it now. It's more fun. They've got a new font and stuff, which just looks more, I guess casual is probably the correct term to use, but it's not like Comic Sans or whatever. It's still a professional looking font, but it's not like a font we've seen in other Microsoft products before. It's a more relaxed font. It's a kind of font you might set on your phone if you use a Samsung or something like that, It's a fun font, and there's nice use of like blur effect and stuff here and there. It's very sparse, but it's nice to see it every now and then when it pops up. But the first new feature here is Copilot Voice, which is, I wouldn't say it's now the primary input method of communicating with Copilot, but it's definitely been elevated above from where it was before. It's fair to say Copilot originally, they wanted you to type to it, right? That it was a chatbot. But now they're emphasizing voice more, because the Copilot now uses, to my knowledge, I guess it's the same tech or very similar tech to GPT-4o, where the voice sounds a lot more human now, and will and as it's thinking and talking like a human does. It's very Her-like. If you've seen the movie Her, it's just like that. Again, it's just like ChatGPT 4o, which was unveiled earlier this year. Except and I think they maybe did this on ChatGPT as well, but in Copilot, the synthetic voices, the AI voices, although they're very human and there's a few to choose from, they've added a very subtle robotic filter on top, just to remind you that it's still a robot, it's not a human. Please don't think this is a real person, because it's not. It is entirely AI, and so any answer you get back, no matter how convincing it sounds, is not recorded by a real person. And I think they've added that robotic synthesizer just to remind you that is the case. So yeah, who knows? Maybe people will start talking to Copilot more, because the umming and ahhing and the fact that it pauses and does like human things as it speaks is really, really weird. I think it's fascinating, and I'm excited to see it as part of Copilot. Now, I believe it's part of Copilot for free, but obviously Copilot Pro subscribers will get priority access to that as well. Then there's Copilot Daily, which is a new sort of, I guess, morning overview of the things you've missed over the last day or whatever it may be. Top headlines, weather, reminders, things you've missed, stuff like that. And it will play like a podcast. So every morning, if you load Copilot up, it'll be like, hey, here's your daily sort of recap. And so you can click into that, and a little media player will appear within the Copilot, and you can skip between the different topics. So the first few might be headlines from top publishers that you've subscribed to or whatever it may be. A couple of them will be some reminders that you may have forgotten to follow up with or stuff like that. And you can skip back and forth between the ones that you just want to listen to, or you can listen to the whole thing like a podcast. I think they last 2 or 3 minutes at most and stuff. So it's a nice sort of brief overview of the things you've missed or maybe wanting to follow up with. And so that's pretty cool as well. And that will obviously use the same voice that you set, because like I said, there's multiple different Copilot voices you can choose now. You can't name Copilot. It's still just called Copilot. So this is where like some of the sort of stuff that Suleyman's talking about in his letter isn't there yet because he wants you to treat it like a friend. But the name Copilot is not very friendly, is it? I wouldn't call someone a Copilot unless I'm flying a plane. So so it's still, although you can set the voice, you can't give it a name and stuff just yet. There's also a personalized Discover feed, which is a card-based interface that sort of you can scroll through for different conversation starters and stuff like that. So anything you can do with Copilot today will now sort of appear in this sort of card interface that you can easily jump into. Copilot in Microsoft Edge has been given a slight update. Not too much going on here currently, but you can now @ Copilot in the address bar. So if you have a question or query, instead of going to copilot.com, whatever it may be, you just type @ Copilot, type your query, hit enter, and that will take you straight to the Copilot interface and give you an answer. And then there's a new preview program they've launched called Copilot Labs. Now, this is exclusive to Copilot Pro subscribers, and Copilot Labs is a place where Microsoft wants to experiment and incubate new features. So things that aren't ready for prime time yet and stuff they just want to try out with a subset of people. If you're a Copilot Pro subscriber, you basically get access to these features. And 2 of those features are available very soon when Copilot Labs starts running out properly. Copilot Vision and Think Deeper. We'll start with Think Deeper because I think that's the boring of the two. Think Deeper is essentially a more complex query search. So you can type in a question, select Think Deeper, and Copilot will take longer to respond. It will think harder, if you will, I guess. And
and this is kind of mirroring what's already on Bing Search.
Yeah, I think they've got, is it generative search or something like that? I can't remember.
Something like that. There's if people have tried it. Like when you go into Bing Search, sometimes if you type something, it'll say like it could do a deeper search.
Right.
And I think this is all kind of connected to that. So.
Yeah, and so basically the idea is it's mostly useful for deeper or more complex questions that you kind of want Copilot to really think about versus, generic stuff. So you could, I don't have an example, but it does say you can use it for like emotional questions too. So if you wanted to, you could ask it, should I break up with my wife? I don't know. And you can think deeper and Copilot will think really hard about how to respond to that. So that's kind of cool, but that's an experimental feature. And then the other one, which I think is much more interested in, is Copilot Vision, which is, as they describe it, a profoundly new way of interacting with a computer. What this feature does is essentially give Copilot permission to browse the web with you. It's not on by default. You have to enable it within Edge. But once you've turned it on, Copilot can see what you can see. So if whatever website you're on, it can see it, and you can just sort of talk to it and ask it questions about the website you're on. You can sort of chat with it about nonsense, and Copilot will respond like a friend. So the example they use in one of the demos is, you're shopping for some shoes or something. You've got, hey Copilot, I'm looking for a red pair of shoes. What do you think about these? And you can be looking at a product page with a red pair of shoes, and it can tell you, oh, they look great, and you can actually get a discount if you go to this website and stuff like that. Now, Copilot, to my knowledge, can't directly interact with the website, but it can tell you what to click and stuff if you are struggling to find a product and stuff like that. So yeah, click down here, and then you can choose to do that or not, and Copilot will probably be offended if you don't. But this is a really, really interesting one, and this one is coming later. To my knowledge, it's not available just yet. The demo that they show off is very conceptual and stuff, but this is clearly what they're going for, and this is very similar to the demo they did back in May, where they were showing off Minecraft, and Copilot was sort of helping the guy play Minecraft. Right. And was crafting a crafting table and stuff. This is basically that, but just for web browsing. I'm thinking they're starting here before they expand it more globally across Windows, because there's some privacy concerns here that I can see people having. Microsoft does say that it's entirely on device. None of the data that Copilot processes is uploaded anywhere, and it actually gets deleted the second you're done with the Copilot Vision session. So yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see how this actually works in the real world. In the demo, it's quite seamless, and yeah, I think it's super interesting. Like you could be browsing the web and reading a news story and be quite upset at the headline or something, and you could tell Copilot that, and Copilot could read that and go, yeah, I agree, it sucks. Or it might be like, I think you're wrong. I think it's actually a great headline. I think it describes this and does that. And, you talk to it like a human. This is the thing I can't get my head around. I just can't imagine ever putting that much effort into it, because I know it's not a real person. Am I the only one who thinks this way? I don't know.
So, possibly, like I said, this is so early days. Like we're going to look back on this in a couple of years and, kind of laugh just because of how undeveloped a lot of this stuff was, and we didn't know where it was going. But the internet in general was like that as well. Like, it's weird thinking about when the internet first came on, and we had Gopher and FTP and these different kind of tools, and it wasn't even a World Wide Web yet. And then someone came out with the World Wide Web in a browser, but then like no one could actually like talk about the advent not only of social media, but the effects of social media on society and government, and the pros and cons of it, right? There's just so much that came out of those tools that no one could really predict at the time what was going to happen, what was going to catch on or not. So I think there's a lot of room here for flexibility. It is weird, the idea that talking to your PC or your phone, but I don't know. I find humans weird in general, just because of how social we are. And so I could see as it becomes more human-like, people will naturally kind of fall for, the illusion. Whereas some people, it's kind of like the idea of like when you watch a movie, suspension of disbelief kind of thing. Like we watch movies and we just kind of accept that it's real, even though you could sit there and analyze scenes and be like, that would never happen, or, so I think there's going to be some room here for flexibility, but all this stuff can change and will change over the years. And that's hence why they're doing these labs in the first place, right? To kind of see what people want and will accept and prefer with this AI stuff. So there's a lot of ways all this can go, but we're literally just starting out with it now.
Yeah.
So
I think for me, Copilot Vision and the new Copilot interface and the fact that it's supposed to be more emotional and fluid and stuff, it's really laying the groundwork for this idea. And I think Steve Batish or Bashi, I can't remember his last name now. He talked about this at his build at his build session last year, where he was talking about AI and the sort of 3 different ways of implementing AI. There's in the app, there's outside the app, and there's as like an orchestrator, which is I guess another word for operating system. I can totally see Microsoft trying to push like a Copilot OS at some point in the near future, where and Satya Nadella, I think, even teased this, right? He has said things like, I view Copilot as the new start button. I go to Copilot to do things.
Yeah.
Right now, that's not how most people use Copilot, at least based on how I've seen people using Copilot. In fact, I rarely go to Copilot. I know Dan, I think, uses Copilot a lot more than me.
Oh, I use it a ton.
Yeah, but you don't go to it to launch apps and stuff, right? You don't use it you wouldn't type, edit this photo for me in Copilot, right? At least not currently.
I mean, can I even do that?
Well, this is what I'm getting at. This is what I'm getting at. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they're working towards, where basically you just type what you want to do on a computer. The desktop is a blank screen. It's a text box. You can either talk to it or you type. I want to edit a photo in Photoshop. Hit enter. Copilot will orchestrate what you need to be able to do. It will bring Photoshop to the front. It will add the image, do it for you.
I mean, I'm all for, I wish AI could like auto edit photos, but there is this bigger question of like, well, you'd have to use prompts, right? You can't just like give it a photo of your dog and be like, edit this. It's gonna be like, well, what do you mean edit?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. Yeah, I say I need the background removed in this picture. And then for Copilot.
Yeah, I always find that funny too. Is like that's the big go-to thing right now with AI and like photo editing, because like I've used that feature like twice. Like I mean, how many people are regularly taking photos and like, all right, now remove the background? There are definitely use cases for that. It's the same thing with, and I love Samsung and their Galaxy AI stuff, but the ability to draw on photos and have it fill in something like. I've used that like 3 times, mostly just to try it out, but I've never like wanted to use that. But I'm also bad at drawing. I think a lot of like whether I would use this stuff more for my day-to-day activities simply comes down to, one, what can it do and how good does it do it? Yeah. Because if it does it well, like if I give it a photo and tell it, make it 16:9 and fill in the background and make it a little bit brighter, make it look like, make it ready for Instagram and all this kind of stuff. Like, and it can do that. And the end product is something I like. Yeah, of course I'll use that. Yeah, why not? I was actually kind of intrigued. I took a screenshot. No, I saved an image on my phone the other day. This is the Galaxy Fold 6. And I saved the image, and it was a comic, and I cropped a section of the comic to use. And I was going to share it, and then it asked me, "Would you like to share this, or would you like to save this as a higher resolution?" And it automatically upscaled it and
Nice.
made it look better. Now, I didn't know that was a thing, like, but it did, and it worked, and it looked really nice. It looked way better than the original. So I think stuff like that, is really beneficial. But yeah, a lot of it comes down to the end product, right?
Yeah. And like I said, I think what's next for Microsoft is an OS that is basically just Copilot, and it is the orchestrator, and you tell it to do what you want to do on a computer, and it's smart enough to
Yeah.
be able to bring that to you. Not to say it will basically do everything for you, but it will be able to surface tasks and apps automatically versus you having to hunt and go for certain files and stuff like this, and opening that file in that app and then dragging that from that app into the other app to upload it to that service. Copilot ideally would be able to streamline the whole thing so that you pulls up an app, you do the edit, and then Copilot can take it from there. Or the other way around, Copilot does the edit and then you can take it and put it wherever it is you want to put it, stuff like that. I definitely think that this is where Microsoft is going, and that's what Solomon is hinting at with his big long letter about how Copilot's the future of everything. The only question I have really now then is, how does Microsoft do this about a mobile platform? Because I think we're going to have this uphill battle where Apple's going to do something down the line, and Google's probably already doing it with Gemini.
It works across devices.
And it works, people prioritize their phone over their PCs and stuff. Why should people install Copilot on their phone versus just using the assistant that comes with their phone? And this is Microsoft's biggest battle,
right now the reason is because, like, if I use Copilot Pro, I'm paying for it, so I'll use it over Gemini.
Yeah.
That's the only reason. But if I wasn't invested in Copilot Pro, I would use Gemini. But if I, got the Gemini Pro on my Android phone, how do I use that on a PC, right? So same thing, kind of. You can use it in the web browser, but you know what I'm saying. Google Gemini doesn't have a integration into Windows. So I would say Google is kind of in a similar position. They have Chrome OS, of course, but let's be real here. That's my phone just went off. Yeah.
You mentioned Chrome OS, but Google does also have Chrome the browser, which they could very easily add Gemini and AI to that, and that could be its AI platform on Windows.
Sure, but that's Edge too, right? So
yeah, but Edge has 2% market share.
Right. Yeah, I know, but yeah. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. Obviously, you and I both always agree that Microsoft should always have had a phone system. Yep. They've had multiple opportunities. Even when they got rid of Duo and then they lost Panos, the AI thing wasn't a thing yet. Had those two kind of overlapped, I think they would have paused canceling Duo. But I don't know. I do find the idea of like streamlining the user experience with AI super interesting, if only because I've always talked about this. The problem with operating systems is we expect yearly iterations on them, and that's the cadence now we see across all platforms. But what it really results in at the end of the day is just feature cramming and complexity increasing, right? I've said this before. Like, people are like, "Oh, iOS is so successful because it's so easy to use," and there was a time when that was true, back when it was like iOS 3. Now we're on iOS 18, and I don't really use my iPhone very often. I have a mini, and I can't wait to get rid of it. By the way, I'm just so done with Apple. But if you gave me a new iPhone, like, there's a learning curve there. Yeah. There's a lot of lingo that if you've never used Apple before, that you kind of need to learn, and that's confusing. So I think AI does play a role there in terms of mitigating that for the user. So,
yeah. Well, on the subject of operating systems, Copilot wasn't the only thing that was updated today. Microsoft also announced a bunch of new AI features coming directly to Windows 11, specifically Windows 11 Copilot Plus PCs. In fact, there were basically 4 big new AI features on the way. And these features, I think, and I was saying to Dan earlier, I think these features actually make Copilot Plus PCs worth it now. I think back when Copilot Plus PCs first launched back in May, June. In regards to AI, what I'm talking about there, like when they first launched, Microsoft was pushing the AI front quite heavily, but there wasn't really much there in regards to AI. And I think I even said in my original review of the Asus RevoBook, which we reviewed as the first Copilot Plus laptop, in regards to Copilot Plus stuff, there isn't much there. It's actually a bit of a letdown. I think that changes with these upcoming features, which Microsoft say are rolling out in the fall. So let's sort of run through them here, and we can talk more about them in depth. There's a new feature coming called Click to Do, which sort of ties into Windows Recall, except it's for the active desktop. So you can press and hold the Windows key and then press and click on your mouse, and that will activate Click to Do. And from there, it basically enables an AI overlay that can see everything that's currently on your screen, highlight text, images, stuff like that. And from there, you can sort of do contextual commands. You can either search the web based on what you've highlighted, or you can summarize some text that you've highlighted, or rewrite some text, whatever it may be. You could be writing an email, for example. You could open Click to Do, ask it to help me write this email, and it will do that. This is a super cool idea. I think this is very similar to Google's Circle to Search on Android, which I think first launched with the Samsung Galaxy earlier this year, then came to Pixel 8, the Pixel series as well. This is basically Microsoft's version of that, except it can do a bit more in regards to summarizing and rewriting text, which I don't think Circle to Search can do currently on Android. But this is a cool idea, and this is, I think, another good example of like AI being a productivity tool that sort of works invisibly behind the scenes. And that's no more apparent than with AI coming to Windows Search. This is the other thing Microsoft has announced, that they're going to fix Windows Search with AI exclusively on Copilot Plus PCs. What they're really doing here is they're adding descriptive language to Windows Search, and this will be apparent in the File Explorer search bar, as well as the Windows Settings search bar, and the actual universal Windows search pane that you get when you go into the Start menu. And so with AI in Search, you'll be able to use descriptive language to find documents and images. So for example, if you have a whole bunch of photos of a barbecue you went to last Saturday, but none of the images actually have barbecue in the title, you can still type barbecue and Windows will be able to surface those photos. So even if there's no hint of barbecue in the metadata or the title of the file, if it looks like a barbecue in the image, Windows will be able to find that file and show it to you in the search results. That, I think, is really cool. And this isn't technically new tech. I'm pretty sure this has been, I think, around for a while, but it being built directly into Windows on Copilot Plus PCs is incredible, and I'm super excited to try it. And then they're adding something called Super Res in Photos, and what this essentially does is allow you to upscale photos. So if you have a low-resolution image, maybe it's an old image or it's just a low-resolution image you found on the internet, you can take it into Photos, use Super Resolution, and essentially upscale it up to 8 times to make it more clear, which is nice. And then Microsoft is also adding generative add and arrays in Paint. Now, this can most easily be described as Magic Eraser, but in Paint. You know, Google's Magic Eraser, which allows you to circle objects in an image and have it either be removed, or with the new Pixel 9 series, you can add things to an image using generative technology. This is the same in Paint. So you can circle an area in a picture and say, put an airplane here, and it will generate an airplane in the picture. So yeah, that's the other cool thing they're adding. Those are the 4 big AI features coming to Copilot Plus PCs. I believe they're going into preview in October, but they should start rolling out later this year. What are your thoughts on those, Dan?
Yeah, I think they're all really great features. I just, talked about the upscaling thing. I find that very useful, actually. Even if you take photos and you zoom to crop and all this kind of stuff, that's where that tool can be used, right? So it's not just like finding an old photo. That said, I have found old photos and use upscaling to improve them. And it's really kind of cool how it does that. Now, you got to be a little careful. At least I have some professional programs that use like the GPU that do this. So you can go overboard with it. It's like over sharpening or, those kind of technologies. But it's getting really good in the ability to sort of fill in the information. The circle to search kind of thing with the web or just doing anything on the device, I think is great too. I use circle to search a lot. Really? I tell you where it's really become valuable. So if you ever see me in a meeting, I often have one of my mugs, and I have this one I'm holding up. And I had a sister. It was a green one with ladybugs on it. And they're just little delightful things. But more importantly, I've had them for almost 20 years. And I recently broke one, and I was just kind of devastated. So, of course, my immediate, thought was, can I buy a new one? Or can I find this somewhere on the internet? And so I took a picture of what was remaining, and then I did a circle to search. And sure enough, I got all these results. And what's cool about circle to search too is when you do it, you can actually refine it and add in keywords after it to help narrow down the results. But I was able to find it. I didn't buy it yet, but I know I can buy this on eBay if I wanted to. Same thing with, I have these salt and pepper shakers that I got from South Korea last year, and they're just kind of really cool. And I didn't even know when I bought them, they were like apparently like a trend on like TikTok and all this, and they became really popular. Now my cat during the night broke one on the shelf, and so I was kind of devastated. Again, took a photo of it. I also, another time I used it was extremely valuable. It was another cat related incident. Our bed has remote controls to control the elevation of the bed and like the air bladders inside. And he chewed through the cable, so useless, right? Now I know I can replace the unit, so I did the same thing. Circle to search, found it on eBay, just that one part, and was able to order it and get it replaced. So it's extremely valuable for stuff like that. Like I use it all the time. Of course, if you're just out in the world and you see something and you want to know more about it, you could do that too. Obviously, they often show it people taking a picture of someone and highlighting their shirt or pants or whatever, and it goes out and fine. I think that's like really amazing technology. That search is already impressive. And it's gotten so good with this kind of AI stuff. I was doing the This Week in Tech podcast with Leo Laporte this past weekend, and we were talking about AI, and I was trying to think of this movie that I had watched, and all I did was I wanted to get the title of it, and all I did was go to Copilot and type in like movie 1960s British computer takes over world, and it immediately gave me the answer and the full thing. And I was just like, search is just like, it's gotten so good for finding information. So, getting back to your point about the search on the computer too, right? That's always been a weakness of Windows, where even Mac was way better than that. But the problem with our digital lives today is that we just have so much digital stuff. We're always recording everything and saving everything. Or times you just see something, you're like, oh, where was that from? And like, there's a lot for the human brain to absorb and try to process and try to remember that we possibly can't. I mean, if you look at like the amount of photos, I know you and I both have a ton of photos stored in our cloud, right? Just being able to go back and find that stuff now. It's one reason I know you and I agree on Google Photos is better than OneDrive in this sense. Like you can go to Google Photos and just type in kind of vague stuff, and it's not perfect, but it does generally surface those results. So this is where I find like AI extremely helpful and useful, and I say bring it on.
Yeah, I'm super excited for Click to Do. I don't know if I agree with the name. I think Click to Do is a lame name.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Yeah.
But the functionality I think is really cool because you open it up and it does that sort of glowing effect that AI seems to do for some reason around the display.
Right, so Siri does that.
Yeah,
too, right?
Siri does it. I think Gemini does it, and now Click to Do does it as well. But at the top you get like a floating search bar, and so you can basically use that to search for anything that's currently on screen, which is nice. But then it's also good for copying text from dialogues that don't normally let you copy text.
Yes.
So like if you get an error dialog pop up, open up Click to Do, you can highlight the text straight from that window and you can paste it somewhere else versus having to take a screenshot, which is what you do currently.
I mean, and PhoneLink does this now.
Yeah.
So in PhoneLink, for those who don't know, or Link to Windows, when you go to your photo gallery and if you click on a pic, if it has text in it, you can now remove the text or like copy the text from the photo right to your clipboard and then paste it somewhere else.
That's great.
Like that is hugely useful. I mean, that's just a really cool use of building this technology into the things we're already kind of using day to day.
Yeah, and this is what I call invisible AI, and that's I think my favorite kind of AI is when the AI is just useful. Like it's not like a flashy thing or like a chatbot or like a personality. It's just a thing that enhances the UX on a platform. And I think Click to Do and AI in search is definitely one of those, especially with AI coming to the Windows settings search box. And what they basically means is you can describe settings that you may not know the name of, and
Right.
Windows will find it for you. So this is going to be great for people who aren't technical, right? If you're somebody who doesn't really use computers or not really interested in technology, but you want to enable, say, dark mode, you could type into the search box. You might not know it's called dark mode. You might say, I want to make my screen darker. If you type that into into the Windows settings right now, Windows settings will go, I don't know what you're talking about. But with AI, it will find both the brightness slider and dark mode for you, which I think is really cool.
And part of that is also the confusion with old school control panel getting merged into settings, but they don't often keep the names exactly the same. There's even that touchpad, trackpad, right? Technically, they're touchpads, but people are used to calling them trackpads, but the OS should definitely know the difference, or, that you're trying to do the same thing when you type that in.
Yeah. It's great for documents as well, because you no longer have to remember the actual title of the document. You can be like, oh, find me the document that mentioned dinosaurs a bunch of times. And then it'll be like, yeah, there was a document here that mentions dinosaurs. Is that what you're looking for? And you go, yeah, that one. That's great. You found it for me. Thank you very much. Super cool. I think I'm very, very excited for these Copilot Plus features. And this is what I was saying, where I think these are the first features that really make Copilot Plus PCs worth it in regards to AI functionality, because this really is starting to separate Copilot PCs from non-Copilot PCs. Non-Copilot PCs aren't getting any of this. You won't be able to use Click to Do. You won't be able to use AI in search. You will not be able to use descriptive language to find files and photos. Those are quality of life improvements that I think are absolutely vital and a huge deal. And so I think that later this year, as these features start rolling out, we're going to start seeing the divide between reviewers recommending any sort of Windows laptop, it doesn't matter, to reviewers going, oh, well, you should consider a Copilot one, because these actually have more features and they're more helpful and useful and better battery life usually. So yeah, this is super, super interesting.
And to be clear, for those who aren't necessarily familiar, the reason why that's the case is the hardware. It's the NPU that this is going to be relying on for that background processing. NPUs are built to do this kind of information processing, whereas a GPU and a CPU could do it as well. They're just not it's not the same things they were built to do, so they're not as efficient. They'll drain your battery. And NPUs can run in the background, do this kind of low-level indexing and searching and all that kind of stuff without taxing your CPU and GPU. And that's the reason why. Now, some people are asking about desktop. Will this come? Which is kind of weird, right? A lot of this stuff technically isn't on desktop, although in theory, if you have an RTX GPU, like that should be, it's definitely, so just to, get that out of the way, an RTX GPU from NVIDIA is absolutely more powerful than any NPU on a laptop. It's not even close in terms of, I think it's like, they're at least 100, 120 tops versus 40. So they can absolutely do that. Now, whether or not Microsoft unlocks that feature to do so, I don't know. The NPU question for desktop is still kind of up in the air, which is kind of weird at this point. I don't know the guidance on that.
I asked, so we're about to get into the recall stuff in a second, but I did ask Microsoft's VP of OS Security, David Weston, about desktops. And he said, he wasn't privy to any plans to bring, Copilot Plus to desktops. But he says from a technical perspective, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have his exact quote in front of me, but from a technical perspective, there's no reason why it can't happen. If a chip maker wants to embed an NPU in the SoC and have that SoC be a removable thing that you can put in a Power PC, then that should theoretically solve the problem, as long as it has a TPM and Windows Hello for things like recall and stuff as well. That said, I'm actually currently just about to start reviewing a mini PC with AMD Strix Point, which does have an NPU and ideally should run recall. So it is technically in desktops, but when people say desktops, I think they're referring to like custom builds, like fully Tower PC type things, right? And yeah, that still remains a question. And currently, to my knowledge, there isn't a CPU on the market with an NPU built into the actual processor. And so we're going to probably just have to wait for that. I'm sure it will come at some point, but for now, those desktop PCs are left out of the fun. And that is a bit of a shame.
And I guess as this stuff grows in popularity, any company that has the resources to do so could create like an NPU PCIe card, right?
Yeah.
That you just, I am not aware of anyone that's doing that and plans on doing that. But there's no reason why that can't happen. And for all we know, maybe Intel is planning on something like that. But I think in order to commit to something like that, the market needs to grow a little bit, or rather, the features for the operating system really need to kind of grow to make use of it.
And we should also just clarify as well, when we refer to Copilot Plus PC, that refers to any architecture. I know originally Copilot Plus was ARM exclusive. Yeah. That has been the case up until about now. We are now seeing Intel and AMD Copilot Plus capable PCs with NPUs of 40 plus tops. Now, to my knowledge, ARM PCs will still get recall in preview first. That's happening at some time in October this month. And then Intel and AMD Copilot Plus PCs will get access to that preview a month later, so sometime in November. But then from there should be a feature parity going forward, getting the same features at the same time. So yeah, Copilot Plus, as we talk about, it refers to any architecture, not just Snapdragon X. It's Intel Core Ultra Series 2, as well as AMD Ryzen AI, whatever they're doing with their branding. So yeah, let's move on to the recall news as well here, because late last week, Microsoft published an update on recall. For those who are unaware, recall has had a bumpy ride since unveiling back in May. It was met with a huge backlash and controversy around, privacy and security. It was discovered that recall was storing data in an unencrypted state on the laptop or on your Copilot Plus device, which was not great because a piece of malware could be built to sort of scrape that data, and then suddenly an attacker has all access to everything you've ever looked at on your computer, including passwords and credit card information and all that other stuff. And so Microsoft rightly and ultimately delayed the feature so that they could address those security issues and concerns, and they're now back to detail how they have done that. And so the new recall really is a lot more secure. There's 4 sort of key pillars and key changes that they've made to recall to ensure that it is as secure as possible. And the first one is ensuring the data it collects is encrypted. And how they're doing that is with a VBS enclave. VBS stands for Virtualized Based Security. And what that translates to is essentially it runs in a VM now. So all of the data recall collects is put into a VM and locked away. Nobody can access it other than the Windows Recall app, which now requires Windows Hello, and that is your authentication key to access the, VM that has all the data in it. So Recall can read that data once you authenticate, and if you're not in front of your PC and you try to open Recall, none of that data will become decrypted, none of it will be sent to Recall. You don't get to see that data, and so that protects you on 2 accounts. It protects you from your laptop being stolen and having your data exposed that way. If you're not in front of your PC, that data is not readable to the person in front of your laptop. And it also means that a piece of malware couldn't ideally get access to that data in the background, because to access that VM, as I'm going to keep calling it, you need that key to unlock the data. And so, a prompt would pop up to unlock Windows Hello, and you'd be like, no, I'm not even trying to open Recall. What's going on? And then you'd find out that there's an app trying to access that data. So that's basically the biggest and the most important change. The recall data is ideally encrypted now. Now, it remains to be seen just how protected that encryption is. It's tied to Windows Hello and the TPM, so ideally it's very secure, but cybersecurity people are going to be trying to get access to that as soon as this preview launches. So it remains to be seen if it is as secure as Microsoft is saying. Ideally, it should be, but we'll have to wait and see. Additionally, Microsoft has changed how recall sort of ships in the OS. It's now opt-in versus opt-out. If you remember originally when recall was announced, it was a feature that when you were going through the out-of-box experience, it would sort of say, hey, this recall's a new feature. And you basically just had the option to say, okay. There was no option to say, no thanks, turn it off. To turn it off, you had to hit the desktop, go into settings, and then disable recall that way, which was not great. And so now with the new recall, when you are setting up your Copilot Plus PC, you will get the recall screen, and there will be an option to turn it on or turn it off directly on that screen. So if you turn it off, that's it. It's off. And once you hit the desktop, that service won't be running. And Microsoft has even gone a step further, and it will allow you to even uninstall Recall if you don't want it. Not through the out-of-box experience, but once you hit the desktop, if you're really not comfortable with Recall being installed on the system, you can head to the control panel and uninstall Recall using the turn features on and off prompt and stuff. And so that will outright remove the Recall app and services from the OS. And so there's definitely no chance of any data being collected, even though they wouldn't collect any data once off anyway. I think that's just about it for the sort of main improvements. Oh, they've also added a new censoring feature. So one of the other issues people had with Recall originally was that in the snapshots, it was collecting everything, including passwords and credit card information and national IDs. Microsoft has added a feature that should attempt to censor that as best as it possibly can. So even if in the rare circumstance that even if an attacker got access to that snapshot data, it wouldn't be able to. They wouldn't find any passwords or credit card information in those snapshots. That will be censored out of the snapshots entirely. Now that is optional. You can turn it off because some people might use Recall to find those passwords in the future. And if you're one of those people, turning off that censoring will be a good idea. But if you're somebody who's just not going to be doing that, keeping the censoring on is probably a smart idea because it will keep all of that valuable and sensitive information out of snapshot data within Recall. So those are the big key changes coming to Recall. As a reminder, Recall is Copilot Plus exclusive. So if you're not running a Copilot Plus PC, you don't have to worry about any of this. You will never get Recall. It's not for you. So don't worry. It's only for new PCs with Copilot Plus. And even then, if you're still concerned about it, you can turn it off and you can even uninstall it. I personally am very excited for this. I think this is going to be one of those big productivity features that really shows how AI can be helpful in your day-to-day. And now that I know that the data is fully secured, even when the device is unlocked and I'm using Windows, that's great. I'm not going to lose sleep every night if running Recall on my Copilot Plus PC now. Dan, what are your thoughts on this? Is this enough for people to give Recall another try?
I think there are two separate kind of questions there, right? So is this enough to, satisfy, a lot of the complaints? And I think yes. I don't want to give Microsoft too much credit here because everything you just talked about, I think should have been there from day one. It was weird that they initially came out with this and announced it and it had these kind of security holes, and they didn't really just think about that this would bother people. The idea of it snapshotting your OS every 30 seconds or whatever, and then storing it unencrypted, and that top level people with access to your Windows could then also access that folder. It was just weird that they so much dropped the ball. So what they're doing now, I think, is literally the bare minimum of what should have been done on day one. That said, yeah, I think this is all good stuff. Have it opt in, sure. Have it uninstallable, sure. I don't know what else people want.
Right.
It's that said, I'm like you. I can't wait to start using this on my laptops. I think it's a really amazing feature. And again, I'll say AI and this idea of technology getting smarter and AI in general, it only works when it knows information. That's the whole training of the AI stuff. And someone was mentioning power in comments, but the amount of power that is used, that people talk about and kind of complain about, is used to train the models. To actually use AI, it doesn't require a ton of power, hence an NPU, right? That's the whole point of this thing. But it needs to know you. I've said this example before. It's like saying, oh, I want AI in my life. I want to be able to smartly know what I want to do to things I like and where I should go. Like, for instance, you and I were joking that when we were in Germany, we looked at the beer list and it was just German words and we didn't know necessarily what was what. It would have been nice not only if I held up my phone and it gave me translations, but I use Untapped, right, for logging my beers. If you went through my Untapped, I have over 300 logins or using of check-ins, I guess, for beer. You should be able to run machine learning on that, and you'd definitely be able to figure out the type of beer I like, right? So the idea of if I held up my phone, it should not only translate, but ideally be this is the beer you want that you'd most likely like, right? That's where we want AI to be. That's the only way it can be useful. Otherwise, we're going back to the days of Cortana and Siri and stuff like that. But in order for that stuff to work, you have to give it access to your information. Otherwise, like I said, it's like hiring a real life personal assistant, and then they come over and they're like, okay, I'm your new personal assistant. can you tell me a little bit about yourself? I'm like, no, sorry, I have privacy concerns. Okay, can I? And so if you don't give your personal assistant any information about what you do or what you're interested in and what your likes are, it's not going to be a very good personal assistant, right? They're
Yeah.
not going to know the kind of food you like, the kind of movies you want to watch. They're not going to be able to do any of that stuff for you. So there has to be a sort of surrendering of your information. The question is, of course, not everybody wants that. Totally fine. And these always should be opt-in systems. I don't think there's any disagreement about that. So like, I'm not really sure, what the argument there is. I think these systems always will be opt-in and optional, and you can remove them. But for a lot of people who want AI to work, and that includes you, myself, and giving up this information is fine. Now they're putting in things like that blocks your banking numbers and credit card numbers and ID information, and will blur that stuff out. I think that's all smart things and smart use of just machine learning, which is already being used here. So it's a smart application of that technology, and it's all stored locally. It's encrypted on the device. It never leaves the device. And of course, people are going to be like, yeah, but do you trust it? It's like, well, if you start getting to this, do you trust Microsoft thing? I don't even know why you're listening to this podcast. Like, I don't know why you would even use a Windows computer at that point. Like, if you don't trust them here, why trust them elsewhere? Like, for all you know, then there's already an application running in the background, screenshotting everything and sending it to the NSA and FBI, and they have a huge file. And you're like, if you're going to go down that route, you might as well just give up all Windows PCs, and then you can go to Mac, but it's the same thing. You're just trusting them that they're doing it. Like, everybody's like, oh, Apple, they're concerned about safety and privacy. That's what they're kind of known for. You're taking their word for it, though. Like, I mean, there's like, sure, you can do independent auditing, and that's a thing, and that should be done too. But at the end of the day, you just, you don't know. You might have malware on your computer right now that is totally just sending information back to someplace, right? You won't know, because that's the point of malware. That's how it's supposed to work. So I think, this question, the only way you're going to get around it then is like you have an air-gapped Linux computer, in which case, air-gapped meaning it's not connected to any network, in which case, I don't know what you're doing on this computer. It's just,
Right.
And you also get into the whole thing with the hardware you're buying, right? One of the things with, I think, it's air-gapped computers is that, like, where the computer comes from, or ideally you're getting it right. You're putting it together yourself even, right? Because there could be supply chain interceptions. You can kind of get around this a little bit if you just go out into the world and randomly buy a computer and hope that not every computer has this stuff in. But again, you're making that assumption versus ordering a computer online and having it sent to you, right? Because that could be intercepted. And we just saw this, right, with Israel and what's going on with Lebanon, how if you intercept the supply chain, you can definitely cause some havoc. So I find once you go into this kind of down this route of privacy and concerns, and they're spying on us and they're doing this, it's like, I mean, you have a phone with GPS on it that can track you everywhere you go. It has microphones on it. It has cameras on it. We know that stuff called, was it Pegasus? Is that the program Israel uses that can like turn those things on and spy on you at any time? Like, so like all this technology has that potential effect for that. I don't know why some people draw the line and say, well, Copilot now, that's ridiculous. They're spying on you. They're doing, and meanwhile, everything else I just mentioned is like fine and okay. And, you're just taking the company's word for it. So you're either all in on this or you're not, so.
Real quick, Drew in the chat mentions that it sounds as if malware could still try to trick people into authenticating. And I guess theoretically, yes, that could be possible. A piece of malware could try to spoof itself as Recall and attempt to authenticate into the VBS Enclave. But Microsoft has also thought of that. I'll read this word for word here because there's a little security wording and stuff here. But it basically, recall storage services reside in a VPS Enclave to protect data, keys, and tampering from malware or attackers operating on the machine. Because the snapshot service must release information requested by the user by design, a key tenet of the design is to reduce the potential for exfiltration of data outside the normal use of the recall system. Processes outside of the VPS Enclave never directly receives access to snapshots or encryption keys and only receive data returned from the enclave after authorization. The authorization period has a timeout and anti-hammering protection that limit the impact of malicious queries. The snapshot service is also a protected process, further limiting malicious access to memory containing the data returned from the query outside the VPS Enclave. What that translates to is, even if an attacker got into that VPS Enclave and was able to request data, it can't request a lot of things before being locked out. It basically has anti-hammering. It will basically watch for suspicious activity and go, this isn't how the Recall app normally accesses this data. We're going to block you from doing this. And so that reduces the impact an attacker has if they were to theoretically get access to that data. So, Microsoft has thought of everything here, or most things here, I guess. We should never say a piece of security is fully protected,
right.
But I think they've done a good job here at trying to make it as secure as possible. Like I said, it remains to be seen if cybersecurity hackers and researchers are able to get into it and break that encryption. But as of right now, we don't know that, and I think it's safe to assume that won't happen, if only because... Actually, has BitLocker been decrypted? Has that been beaten? I don't know, because it's basically using the same tech as BitLocker. So I think BitLocker's a proven secure encryption method. I don't want to speak too soon, but I'm pretty confident that this is going to be okay. And if it is broken immediately, I'm sure Microsoft will continue working on it to make it more secure for the next time.
Yeah, I mean, this happens with iOS and macOS all the time. There's always security vulnerabilities that are discovered and then are addressed in security bull. And no piece of software is ever going to be completely secure.
Yeah.
It's, but again, I think this is in the right step. And we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah. Right. Let's move on to our last two subjects here. 24H2. Which is old news to us now. I've been running 24H2 since at least the summer, probably even before then. But It's now generally available. So if you have parents or grandparents or kids who don't care about technology that have Windows laptops, you can now force them to the latest version of Windows where they'll notice nothing's changed. But things have changed. 24H2 actually is a nice update. It's the first sort of actual platform release, Windows platform release in 2 years. The last one was version 22H2. 23H2 was not a platform release. 24H2 is. And what that essentially means is Microsoft has packed in a whole bunch of under-the-hood performance and security improvements. And this is actually notable. Like, people have been talking today that 24H2 actually runs better, even on unsupported PCs, versus 23 and 22H2, which is nice. I believe OEMs have also come out and said expect to see gaming performance improvements when upgrading to 24H2 on select systems with certain GPUs and CPUs, which is really nice as well. There's also some quality of life surface level changes and features as well, such as the context menu and File Explorer now having labels for the most common actions like cut, copy, paste and stuff, and now sort of being positioned at the top of the context menu as well, which is really nice. You can also create 7Z and tar files within the File Explorer, which is cool. And then over the next few months, there's also more stuff coming, such as Phone Link in Start, Simplified System Tray, and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. Wi-Fi 7 is now supported. So if you bought a Windows laptop with Wi-Fi 7, but it's running 23H2, you haven't been using Wi-Fi 7. Windows 23H2 doesn't support it.
You probably also don't have a router. That's of course.
That too. But now if you upgrade to version 24H2, that Wi-Fi 7 hardware will become active and you can start utilizing it if you also have a Wi-Fi 7 router, which is really nice. So yeah, 24H2 now generally available. It's rolling out in Microsoft's waves, as we call it, which essentially means you probably won't see it yet. If you go to Windows Update, hit check for updates, it won't be there. You can try enabling, get the latest updates as soon as possible, toggle, which might surface it for you. But if it doesn't, you can head to the Windows 11 ISO download page and you can manually do the upgrade using the installation assistant there or the ISO download itself, which is a simple sort of in-place upgrade, which is usually about 10-15 minutes depending on the hardware. Of course, you don't get access to any of the Copilot Plus stuff, so no recall, no click to do, no AI in search, none of that. That's not for you. You get all of the other stuff that's non-Copilot Plus related. So there you are. And then lastly, let's talk a bit about HoloLens. I think we all saw this coming for a while. I think earlier this year it was, or maybe late last year, Microsoft announced that Windows Mixed Reality in Windows was being killed off. And so the question arises, how long does HoloLens have? At the time, Microsoft was saying HoloLens is still fully supported, and that actually still remains true as of now as well. The big difference here today is that Microsoft is actually ending production on HoloLens hardware. So up until, I guess, this week or the last few weeks, Microsoft has been producing new HoloLens devices. They've been making them at the factory and shipping them all around the world where they sell them. That stops now. And so whatever stock they have left, that's the last of it. So if you're a Microsoft hardware collector and you want a HoloLens 2 in your collection, think about getting one now because they're going to be extinct soon. And so just like the Duo and the Duo 2, you cannot find a new Duo or Duo 2 anywhere now. They are all gone. You can only find beaten up and used ones. So it's I'm not surprised that this has happened. I think HoloLens, it found its niche, which was enterprises, and all of the enterprises who ever considered it have bought it now. And no new enterprises are buying them because it doesn't make sense to when you have Meta and Apple and whoever else are making VR headsets doing this now and also catering to the enterprise. I think Meta especially are really eating into HoloLens's market there with their suite of enterprise stuff. And the fact that even Microsoft is working with Meta. You can get Microsoft 365 and Windows 365 on Meta Quest headsets now, and then you can have virtual desktops surrounding you and stuff. It's great. It's actually probably better using Windows in a Meta Quest than it is on a HoloLens. And so I think it's fair to say that it's been a long time coming. It's a shame because it's one of those things. It's Microsoft was first to market. They had the tech. They did it first. And then they failed to capitalize and flubbed it. And everybody else came in and took over. And now they're exiting the business.
Well, yeah, I think that glosses over a bigger thing, which is that this category so far has been a flop in general.
Yeah, but Facebook seems to have found some success repositioning
with the
its
Meta
whole
Quest, but
company around it.
It's mostly it's mostly VR.
AR. Yeah.
Right, and it has a thing where you can turn on the cameras and give you this
that's what the Vision Pro
kind
is
of
as well.
experience.
But we all know that they're heading, heading to AR.
Yeah, but Vision, but we talked about this before. The HoloLens at least lets you see the real world. You're not looking through cameras and all this kind of stuff. There's still advantages to the hardware, and Microsoft still owns the hardware and probably will still keep developing and hammering at it in the background because I think people are starting to realize, especially after the Meta Ray-Bans. Those are pretty successful. I've heard nothing but good things about them. And what makes them great is, one, they're affordable. Two, and more importantly, probably, they look just like normal glasses.
Yeah.
And three, they don't try to do too much. They just have some basic functions that are pretty straightforward. And I think that's the smart approach to this technology. I think, what Microsoft did was amazing. It's kind of funny that Apple didn't learn though from this idea of like, let's start from the most complicated headset we can make and jam as much technology as we can into it and make it really expensive, and we'll go from there. Whereas because we hear like there's rumors of like a Vision Pro Lite coming out, right? So what are they going to do? They're going to start stripping out features. When it's like, okay, well that makes it a little bit less exciting, even though it'll make it more affordable and more people will probably buy it. So it's like where Meta is starting, like they can iterate and build upon those glasses, add features and refine. And it's just easier to do. It's already, the time to market. Like HoloLens, you and I from day one were like, I don't know if, people were going to use this, and you and I always joked around that there wasn't a lot to do in it. Like, yeah, we could run Windows and do like cool stuff. You can have your email open and listen to music. And it was a cool experience. But at the end of the day, it was just like, I'm still going to use my desktop PC. I'm still going to use my laptop. It was just easier. And so I don't think Apple is going to be successful with the Vision Pro, which, let's be clear, the Vision Pro is effectively a HoloLens, give or take, with Apple's, juice in it. But that thing, like everybody's talking about how it's It's not doing well. It's not selling well. People don't even talk about it anymore. Even Mark Gurman from Bloomberg was just writing about how it looks to be more like a technology showcase rather than a real product, you know? So I think AR glasses, like X Real, those are what, between $200 and $500, depending on the model you get. These are just way more practical, and they're not even still perfect. You're still putting on glasses. There's a cable, right? So it's still not ideal. But I think someday we all envision having normal looking glasses that you put on, and they will show you stuff in the glass and only you can see it. They'll have AI built in. Like I think people see that, but that's what they want, not a wearable 2-pound computer that goes on your head.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was a nice effort for them. But Microsoft at least was smart enough to not ever try to bring HoloLens to the consumer market. Because that's what a lot of people are asking for. Like, just release it, right? And at least they're like,
you couldn't add that
we're
price.
not seeing it.
Yeah, you just couldn't.
Yeah.
If they could,
and there wasn't a use case.
Yeah, yeah, but if they could have brought the price of HoloLens down, which I know is a big theoretical, which wasn't technically possible based on what the HoloLens was as a product, but if they could have, if it was a thing that they could make for say $500, I think,
of course,
yeah, this would be a very different conversation we're having now. But it was.
I still think it would have been different, but it would have been different in the conversation of like MetaQuest, where MetaQuest goes for around that price. And it has a very dedicated group of people who love using it. But you also have a large segment of people who buy it, use it, and then never touch it again.
Yes.
And it still has a problem with mass market appeal, despite how good it is and how affordable it is.
It's still too big and too heavy. That's ultimately what it comes down to. But these companies are working towards making that not be the case. And we're probably still 5-10 years away from that at that minimum. But I do. The goal clearly is to just have them be glasses, or even further down in the future, contact lenses or implants. That's kind of what they kind of want to go. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg himself has said he thinks this form factor, not the headsets themselves, but sort of wearable heads-up display technology, will replace smartphones. And I kind of agree with him, as long as the execution of that is done right, of course. Which is why I think it's a shame that Microsoft is bowing out of this. Now, technically, we don't know if they're bowing out for sure. We know that they're ending production on HoloLens. They're going to keep supporting HoloLens 2 as a platform up until 2027, I believe. But there are rumors that Microsoft is working on a VR headset with maybe Samsung, whoever it may be, to bring something to market, VR first with pass-through cameras, just like the Apple Vision Pro. I don't know if that runs Windows or if it runs Android. To my knowledge, I think it's an Android thing. And I think that's where my biggest disappointment with all this is that Windows is dead in this space. There is no Windows AR XR platform anymore. That has been and gone. They've given up on that. So whatever Microsoft does next, even if it is hardware, it might not be hardware. It might just be experiences on top of Android. It's not Windows. It's just apps on top of Android. And so I think that's my biggest disappointment there. It's just another example of Windows failing to expand beyond personal computers. For whatever reason, Windows can't find a new paradigm. It is stuck on laptops and desktops, and no matter where they try to take it, nobody wants it. Everyone rejects it. Like, no, we don't want Windows here. Go away. And so Microsoft has no choice but to keep building Windows for computers, because that's the only form factor where Windows makes sense, and that's a real shame in my eyes.
Even when, to bring up Windows Phone, it had a completely different user experience and UI on it that didn't look anything like Windows, even though it was called Windows Phone. Yeah. But even that we all agree that was like an amazing design that was very efficient to use, and it looked cool, and it was very different, and people were still like, no. So it's like, it looks too confusing, right? It was almost too advanced for your average user. So that's the confusing part. Yeah, I think I think the idea of them partnering with a company like Samsung, and they also have deep relationships with Meta, I think is probably more fruitful than them necessarily releasing their own hardware. Microsoft doesn't have a great track record, period, of releasing hardware. We have Surface, But even that, like you can really just whittle down to mostly Surface Pro,
Yeah.
right? Followed by Surface Laptop. But Surface Laptop is like literally like it's a generic laptop.
Yeah.
It's a really good one.
Yeah.
But you know, it just when that came out, people are like, why are they making a laptop? You know, it's
Yeah.
like so boring. Um, but they don't have a great history with doing hardware and
No.
bringing hardware to market. So
I still think Satya. I think hasn't Satya even come out and said now that he regrets killing Windows Phone. That is that. If Windows Phone is a pit of burning money, you keep burning it. that is
Yeah.
whatever. The whole company exists to keep that phone effort alive. That's what you should have been looking at how, and they just didn't. He was like, let's kill that. Like, why would you? It's crazy.
I think it was because, and there's probably some responsibility here on the Windows Phone team or where it was at that point. Windows 10 Mobile, I don't think, even as a fan of Windows Phone,
10 Mobile.
I didn't really enjoy Windows 10 Mobile compared to Windows Phone 8.1,
Agreed.
which I thought was kind of like
sure.
the pinnacle, right? And so I think they kind of lost it. And I think people kind of forget this a little bit. Like towards the end there, it got a little, wacky. Like we had the Windows 10 Mobile experience, which was incomplete and forever coming and improving, but it wasn't as joyful kind of as using Windows Phone 8.1.
Yeah.
And then the hardware was also kind of getting not great, right? This was post Lumia, the 20 series, which I still argue the 20 series was the peak of that. 1520, 920, 820, 720, 620, the 520. Those were all, that was an amazing release.
Yeah.
The 30s, and I've criticized this before with Nokia, that they shouldn't have just changed designs every year just for the sake of changing design. The 9 series should have had design consistency, like for each iteration, just like iPhones do. And when you combine those two things, meanwhile, you have Android, which sucked for a while. Everybody hated it, but then it started getting good. And then you had Chinese manufacturers get on board and start making really good hardware. I understand.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of mistakes made just besides just canceling it. There were a lot of mistakes that I think at the time Adela looked at it and was just like, we don't have anywhere to go with this. All the people who made phones for us are gone. The operating system itself isn't even that great, compared to where it was. Like, what's the roadmap? And more importantly, like, what's the plan to change any of this? And I think someone would have been like, there's really no plan. We don't see any way to necessarily make this better.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that internally at Microsoft, in regards to the hardware side of things, there was politics and butting heads from the Surface team and the newly acquired Lumia Nokia team, and the 950 series was maybe the least inspiring Lumias to ever come out ever, and that is the result of Microsoft acquiring Nokia and going, well, these are the devices that they had ready. We'll get them out the door, and then we can move on to work on our Surface phone. And then
how weird was it that the 950 series had removable batteries?
Crazy. It's funny because I thought the 950 was so old that it didn't have USB-C, but it does. It's a USB-C phone, which I think is wild. It has removable batteries and wireless charging.
Yeah. And Windows, it had the facial recognition.
It had iris. It had iris recognition technically.
Iris, detection.
Slow as hell.
Yes. But it was cool.
It was cool. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. You and I both know that the solution to all this would have been this Surface Duo or Surface Pocket, the original Andromeda Vision that ran a light version of Windows. That would have been kind of their defining device. I don't know if it was sold. They still have the problem with it's too expensive. Ironically, when Duo came out, everybody's like, it's so expensive. Samsung's going to destroy them. And Samsung's like in 2024, like, we're going to charge you an extra $100. How about that? So it's now $18.99. But foldables have, continued to be extremely expensive. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how they would have solved this, but you're right. They should have
I know
just.
how they would have
It would have
solved
been
it.
nice just to have
Keep
this.
throwing money at it forever. Just keep doing that. It doesn't matter if
But like,
if it's
what would
losing
happen with
money.
the apps? Like even the
Well,
apps.
well, so had they decided to keep phone alive, then UWP would have had to have been kept alive as well. And so UWP as a platform would still be around. And ideally, assuming Windows Phone did stick around and it did start growing market share again, I don't know how they ended up doing that, but let's assume it did happen and it maybe made it to 20% market share. App developers would have to pay attention to UWP. And then there would be value in building UWP and then having it expand across phone and desktop. And so we'd have more modern apps on desktop for sure. Whether it be Twitter, Facebook, there was a period of time in sort of the early Windows 10 days where that was a thing. You had Facebook, you had Instagram, you had Twitter as UWP apps on desktop, and that was because of Windows Phone. That's why they were there.
Mm-hmm.
Now everything's a web app because Microsoft doesn't have a phone platform anymore, so there's no reason to develop for UWP, and that's why UWP ultimately died. Phone would have been the anchor for UWP, which would have led to more modern apps coming to the Windows platform as a whole, including extending to HoloLens and to Xbox. And that may have even prolonged things like HoloLens, and that may have led Microsoft down a path where they did try to make it cheaper and bring it to a wider audience. The death of phone killed everything. It was it was the star of the solar system, and the star died. And Windows Desktop is the planet that spun off and found another solar system to live in as an orphan. That's what it is, and that's basically where we are now. Everything died because Windows Phone died.
Yep. And on that note, I think we're about done.
Yes.
There was something else, right, to talk about in the podcast? Yeah.
No, that's everything.
I guess we could do a thing of the week. Or like thing of the last 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And I guess you can go first.
Oh, throw me under the bus. What is my thing of the week? I have been watching Slow Horses on Apple TV.
Oh.
New season's out, airing weekly. It's a fantastic show, one of the best Apple TV. I feel like every Apple TV show I watch, I think it's some of the best television that's ever been created. I'm watching it and I'm just...
Did you watch Dark Matter?
I've not seen Dark Matter, no.
What?
I know, I haven't watched every Apple show. I'm just saying, the ones that I have watched, I think are amazing. And I need to get around to watching more.
That's like a sci-fi show like that you should watch.
No, I know.
That one's really good.
Slow Horses is great. Severance Season 2 is coming, I think, early next year. Everyone should watch Severance. That is Apple's best show, that above everything else, for sure. But yeah, so watch Severance and Slow Horses.
Yeah. Geez, I don't know. I don't know the last thing I saw that was interesting. I think the last time I was in the movies was probably Wolverine and Deadpool.
Oh, yeah, that was a great film. Yeah, good film.
Yeah, it was fine.
Are you going to see the new Venom film, the third one? Have you seen any of the Venoms?
I saw the first one, maybe parts of the second.
Yeah, the third one looks good from the trailer.
Yeah, possibly. I don't have high hopes for it, but that's one of those I'll probably watch on an airplane. That's usually where I see those.
Yeah.
I don't know what else I watched recently that I could recommend. There's probably something, but maybe I'll think of it next time. So even I'm on the spot, I don't know either. So I don't really have anything to look at my desk to have any cool gadgets. I do like my Galaxy Fold 6 though. I don't think we talked about that.
Maybe not. Yeah, you're a Galaxy Fold 6 user now, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, I had the Galaxy Fold 5 and I traded that in and used a company discount and stacked a coupon, and I got the Fold 6 for about $570, I think it was, which is a really good deal. It's one reason, people might be wondering why I didn't get the new Pixel Fold. I would totally get the Pixel Fold, but two things. One, it doesn't support a pen, and I say that ironically because I barely use the pen on the Fold, but I do like having the pen with it, and for the price, I want it to be able to support pen, even if I barely ever use it. Like Samsung doesn't charge you for the pen, like you got to buy it extra, right? But at least it's an option. With the Pixel Fold, it's like, here's a foldable tablet in your pocket, but it doesn't support inking. It's like, well, what the hell's the point of this? But they also just had terrible trade-in for it, so it still would have cost me like $1,000 to buy that. So it's just like, yeah. But I really do like the Fold series. I said this before, where I bought the Fold 4. I hated it, returned it, got the Fold 5, really liked all the changes. And I know a lot of the consensus seems to have been that like all the Fold 6, it's like, oh, they barely did anything. It's just barely an iteration and, who cares? For someone who really enjoys the Fold 5, to me, the Fold 6 is awesome.
Yeah.
The processor, yeah, I can totally tell the speed difference on the processor. Everything is snappier and feels better, especially on such a large screen. The camera is, although using the same hardware, they did change the ISP and the software for it. Takes way better pictures. I'm going to say, in fact, I did pick up the Pixel 9. And I did a bunch of trade-ins for that one too. And I like the Pixel 9. It's great. They did a nice job of it. I'm not as but when I do photos on the Pixel 9 now and my Galaxy, 9 times out of 10, honestly, I can't tell the difference between the two. If I go pixel peep and all this, sure, there are definitely situations where the Pixel does pull things off better, low light, obviously. But for your average daylight photos, the Fold has been absolutely fine for me, and I really enjoyed the photos. I think it takes some really good pics. The battery life's been great. I do have the case, the S Pen case on it, so I always have the pen with me, which I do like having. And my biggest thing about the Fold is I love they made the cover display slightly larger, slightly wider again, and it's just enough where typing on it is like fine. I mean, I was kind of fine with the Fold 5 too, but for me, the selling point of this device is the one-handedness. I love having this thing in my pocket and pulling out with one hand and just doing everything I need to. While I'm traveling at the airport, I'm at the grocery store, I just find this incredibly useful. Now, the S24 Ultra I have here too, and it's a fantastic phone, but it's like a monster in your pocket when you pull that thing out, right? Even sitting down with it in your pocket is can be painful. Yeah. But I had a real tough time using that one even close to being one-handed without fearing I'm going to just drop it and it's going to shatter. I'm going to cry. I will say, though, the S24 Ultra's display is the best display I've used on any phone, period. So yeah. Did you end up getting you didn't get the new iPhone 16, did you?
No. I'm done with iPhones. I think they suck.
But wait, hold on. A couple of weeks ago, you and I had a conversation, and you tried iOS 18, and you said you actually kind of liked it.
I don't mind iOS 18 in regards to how it's more customizable now, but I still don't like iOS as a entity, as just how it is. Also, I don't like Apple. I just don't like how snobby they are with that stuff. Like, go away. I don't want to be locked into your experience. I'm not.
Yeah, I'm the same way. The only reason I use the Mini is because it's a Mini, and I use it at the gym. And then I use it with the Apple Watch. But the Apple Watch for me is also just a glorified Spotify playlist controller. But I'm pretty close to. I got to talk to Samsung, see if they can send me their Galaxy Watch. I'm pretty sure I'm just going to switch to a Galaxy Watch and just use Android as my gym device. You're not
on the Fitbit train anymore.
No, I use Aura. I use Aura as my.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's my primary health thing for sleep, and that at the gym though I don't wear the Aura because I do weights and you just end up scratching it all up and stuff. So I will use like the Apple Watch for weights. But then again, I'm mostly using it as a timer. It's just for intervals for when I'm counting in between sets, and then how long I've overall been working out, as well as maybe my heart rate. But any wearable can basically do that. So,
I really dislike how every health tracking platform is like isolated. There should be. I mean, maybe there is. I don't know. I've not looked into it. There should be a way to sync everything to like a health profile that syncs across.
Android has that.
Does it?
No, they both do. So Apple Health is that, and Android has one. I forgot what they call it. So if you have a Galaxy Watch, sure, it works with Galaxy phones and all that, but it can sync to this like Google centralized health thing. Like for instance, my Aura Ring syncs to Apple Health. So when I wear Aura Ring all the time, yeah, and it works back and forth. So when I'm at the gym and then I turn my watch off, it syncs to the iPhone. That syncs back to Aura and shows up in Aura as a So they do work like that.
I need to look into that because I've always been annoyed that you can't do that and sync it across different platforms, because I sometimes wear like an Android Wear, or then I'll wear a Fitbit. It's like they're two different platforms. I want them to be the same thing.
Yeah, they should. I still think Apple's probably gets more support here, but I have increasingly seen more and more companies support it. Like in Apple Health, I had like a bunch of apps. I had my scale syncs into it. My blood pressure meter would sync into it.
Mm.
Of course, Aura, the Apple Watch. You can have all that stuff sync into it, and then it will give you the overall picture of your health, which I thought that's the reason I was using it. I thought it was pretty comprehensive. I think you can do a lot of that now in Android too. So, but yeah, you're right. I mean, that makes that stuff much more valuable
Yeah.
when you can do that stuff. So cool. All right. Well, let's wrap it up. We can try to do Q&A with the audience if there are any questions there. Otherwise, we'll be back. I don't know, soonish. We'll see how long there is. But as always, follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, Rubino. Also on Threads, and Zach is ZACBOWDEN. Also on both of those, although he doesn't like Threads, but that's okay. Other than that, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care, everyone.
Yes, we did it. No technical difficulties.
Dude,
Right.
my dogs know that I'm done, and they just
Oh, really?
both jump down. Jeez.
Right. If you are in the comments and you want to ask some questions, put them in the chat now. We'll do our best to try and answer them. Could be about anything, ideally tech. And if there are no questions, we will go.
Dan can walk his dogs.
Oh, I am actually very tired. I'm going to have a long sleep tonight, I think. Oh, I can hear the dog.
Yeah, they're playing with each other right now. We call that Abby the monster.
Which Windows 10 version was your favorite? My favorite was the first one that added like the blur effect to the taskbar. Was it 1709 or 1703? I don't know. That one. The one that like sort of began adding Fluent Design, but then never finished. The first one.
I can't answer that question.
Dad doesn't remember any versions.
Yeah. It's all a blur.
Any sort of extremely rough time frame for an NXT announcement? I don't know what NXT is. No idea what you're talking about there. I've been impressed with the progress with PhoneLink. Do either of you use it often? And if so, how do you find it? Dan is actually a frequent PhoneLink user, aren't you, Dan? How do you find it?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, it's a must thing. Anytime I get a new laptop I'm testing, I immediately connect up to it. You know, I've argued before, I'm a big fan of always connected LTE laptops, but the majority of the ones I get in don't have that. But using a Samsung phone, you can get the ability to connect a hotspot up to your Wi-Fi. How do I explain it? Your phone shows up as a Wi-Fi connection. Yeah, all the time. So if I need to get on the internet, I can keep my phone in my pocket. I just go choose my phone as a Wi-Fi connector and just automatically goes through. Versus everybody else has to just go into their phone, turn on the hotspot feature, then go back to their PC, then connect up. But I really like the features. I said before, pulling out text from photos is great. I like how when you take a picture now, it pops up on your computer and you can immediately click it and copy and paste and do whatever you want with it. I love the ability, not directly related to Link to Windows, but it's part of it you need to have installed, which is the ability to use your phone as a webcam. I think is absolutely fascinating. It works really well. It's so good in a pinch, or if you want a second camera angle, or you just want a better looking camera. I like the text messages, and man, I like being able to read my notifications and just dismiss them and clear them from my phone. I don't know. I absolutely love it. I think they've been rolling out some really, really nice features that I didn't expect. Yeah.
I heard that they're supposed to be adding Copilot integration to the texting area in the PhoneLink app. So when you're like chatting with people, you'll have Copilot integration at the bottom where you can basically ask it to generate a response and stuff. Which
Yeah, they kind of have quick responses now
Yeah.
that are AI generated.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
I don't use that too often.
Yeah, but I think they're going to do actual Copilot integration, which should be interesting. Is it less egregious with the whole having to enter a PIN thing every time you try to do something? Last time I used PhoneLink, it always wanted me to enter a PIN every time I tried to connect it to an app or whatever.
Oh,
enter a
to
PIN.
do that, you mean to go use the apps thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I still need to. Let's see. Yeah, I still need to unlock my device.
Yeah, it's so annoying.
Yeah, but I just tapped a fingerprint sensor and immediately works. Let's see what happens. Yeah, it's kind of an annoying feature, but
Do you think the Laptop 7 is a good upgrade for performance alone using it docked 99% of the time coming from a Surface Laptop 5? Yes, I think so. I think what was the Laptop 5? Intel 12th gen? Yes, probably Intel 12th gen, which is fine, but it's not very efficient. You probably haven't got great battery. Well, as you just said, you're docked all the time, so I guess that doesn't matter. I still think you're getting better performance on the CPU department. I don't know if you're getting as good on the GPU side. Dan, do you know if Intel 12th gen Iris Xe is better than X Elite GPU?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
No, okay, but it's probably not too far off though, right? Because the GPU is the weakest part of the X Elite, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, but the actual GPU is pretty powerful. The problem is it's just that
there's not
a lot of stuff isn't optimized.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, good point. So yeah, obviously keep in mind as well that not all apps are ARM native just yet. So if you're using your laptop 5 for gaming, I probably wouldn't go for a laptop 7. But if not, then the laptop 7 is probably a great choice. Otherwise, consider the laptop 6. Has Intel Core Ultra in it. I actually wouldn't consider that at all. If my recommendation is if you absolutely can't do ARM, I would go for an Intel Core Ultra Series 2 laptop or an AMD Strix Point laptop. Do not go for Core Ultra Series 1. Will there be any consumer Surface releases soon, like a new Go? I don't know. The last I heard, which was a long time ago now, so this may have changed, is that there was a laptop Go planned for this fall. We are in October now, and today would have been a great time to announce it, given that all the announcements that happened today. Maybe they would want to spare it for its own hardware announcement in a few weeks' time. I don't know. I think that would be weird for them to do. But if we don't see it this year, a laptop Go 4 and a new Surface Go, I believe, are on the cards for next year, along with Laptop Studio 3, which will be probably later next year, I think, or maybe even summer next year. But we'll see. But those are the next devices on the docket: Laptop Go 4, Surface Go, I guess 5, and Laptop Studio 3.
All right, I gotta go.
Okay, sure. All right, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back at some point. Follow us, so we'll keep you updated when we go live. But until then, we shall see you next time. Bye bye.